Close your eyes for a moment and remember the coldest night you have ever lived through. The kind of cold that bites your skin, freezes your breath into white smoke and makes metal painful to touch. The kind where even inside your house, the chill crawls across the floor and into your bones. Now erase everything modern from that memory. No heater. No electricity. No insulation panels. No blankets fresh from a factory. Just darkness, fire, earth, animals, and human instinct. This wasn't a nightmare. This was an ordinary winter night for the Vikings. In parts of Scandinavia, winter temperatures dropped as low as -30 degrees Fahrenheit. Cold enough to kill exposed skin in minutes. Yet entire Viking families slept through these nights and woke up strong enough to work, hunt, build ships, and sail into unknown oceans. The question isn't whether they survived. The question is how. The answer begins with something that sounds uncomfortable by modern standards but made perfect sense 1,000 years ago. Vikings slept with their animals. Not nearby. Not outside. Inside the same house, sometimes only a few feet away. Cows, sheep, goats, chickens, and occasionally horses shared the same space as people. This wasn't a lack of cleanliness. It was survival engineering. A single cow produces as much body heat as a large electric heater. Sheep constantly radiate warmth through their thick wool. Chickens huddled together acted like living heat batteries. At night, all of that heat stayed inside the longhouse instead of disappearing into the frozen air outside. Animals were often placed slightly lower than the human sleeping area so the warmth naturally rose upward. Even horses near entrances weren't random placement. Their movement and noise warned families of predators, storms, or strangers approaching in the dark. But heat alone meant nothing without a structure capable of holding it. Viking longhouses may look simple at first glance, but they were built with an understanding of insulation that rivals modern cabins. The walls were layered. An inner wooden wall, a thick core of packed earth and turf, and an outer wooden shell designed to block wind and moisture. That turf layer was the key. Dense, breathable, and incredibly effective at trapping warmth. It worked like natural insulation foam long before the concept existed. The roofs were even more impressive. Sloped and covered with sod that could reach 2 feet thick, they held heat inside and blocked icy winds. In spring and summer, grass grew on top, blending homes into the landscape and adding another thermal layer. Many longhouses were partially dug into the ground, using the earth itself as a natural temperature regulator. Cool during summer. Warmer during winter. Some were angled to catch as much sunlight as possible during short winter days, creating passive heating centuries before the term was invented. The floors were packed dirt, lined with straw, moss, animal hides, or birch bark. Cracks between logs were sealed with moss in a process still used in traditional log cabins today. When built properly, these houses could maintain interior temperatures around 40 degrees Fahrenheit even when the outside world was far below zero. Not comfortable by modern standards, but warm enough to survive the night without freezing to death. Fire played a role, but not in the way most people imagine. Viking homes rarely had chimneys. Not because they didn't know how to build them, but because chimneys pull warm air upward and out. Instead, they used a central fire pit that burned continuously at a low, controlled level. Smoke escaped slowly through a small opening in the roof. This reduced heat loss while still allowing ventilation. The air was smoky, yes, but that smoke preserved wooden beams, kept insects away, and baked warmth into the roof structure itself. Fires weren't roaring. They smoldered. Steady, quiet, efficient. Stones heated in the fire were wrapped in fur and placed beneath sleeping platforms. These stones stayed warm for hours, acting like ancient heat packs. Some fire pits were lined with stone or even whalebone, absorbing heat during the day and releasing it slowly at night. When wood was scarce, Vikings burned peat or dried animal dung, fuels that burned long and low without wasting heat. Cold air sinks, and Vikings understood this well. Sleeping on the floor wasn't just uncomfortable. It was dangerous. So they raised their beds. Wooden platforms and benches lined the walls, lifting sleepers away from the coldest air and closer to the warmth trapped near the ceiling. Some platforms were large enough for entire families. Others had wool curtains or hide coverings that trapped body heat like personal shelters. Storage beneath the beds kept tools, firewood, and food off the frozen ground and insulated by the warmth of sleepers above. In some homes, loft beds were built high near roof beams, where the warmest air collected. Everything about sleep placement followed one rule: stay above the cold. What they wore mattered just as much as where they slept. Vikings didn't remove their clothes at night. They slept in layers. Wool tunics, linen undergarments, fur-lined cloaks, thick trousers, sheepskin hoods. Wool was the foundation. It trapped heat even when damp and stayed warm under pressure. Outer layers were wind-resistant, made from felted wool, leather, seal skin, or fur. Cloaks fastened at the shoulder allowed easy layering without gaps. Feet were wrapped in wool socks or fabric stuffed with moss or straw, simple insulation that worked even on frozen floors. This wasn't fashion. It was a wearable sleeping system. 1,000 years before modern hikers called it layering, Vikings perfected it. Archaeological finds even show warriors buried wrapped in multiple layers of fur and linen, dressed for an eternal winter. But the most powerful heat source wasn't clothing or fire. It came from inside the body. Vikings ate to stay warm. Winter diets were heavy, dense, and extremely high in fat. Whale blubber, seal meat, bone broth, butter, barley soaked in lard. During the coldest months, fat made up most of their calories. This wasn't accidental. Fat digests slowly and releases heat over time, creating steady internal warmth through the night. Some foods were eaten specifically before sleep to fuel the body while resting. Hot bone broth, rich in fat and collagen, was common before bed. Preserved foods like dried fish, fermented meat, and underground butter stores ensured energy even when hunting failed. Raw fats provided more heat than cooked ones, something modern science only recently confirmed. Every bite was fuel for survival. And finally, there was the simplest and most reliable heater of all. Other people. Vikings slept together. Parents, children, elders, all sharing the same sleeping space. Human bodies radiate heat constantly. Pressed together under heavy furs, families formed a shared thermal mass that dramatically raised the temperature around them. Dogs slept alongside their owners not as pets but as living heat sources. Massive fur coverings stitched from multiple hides turned sleeping platforms into insulated shelters. Warmth was communal. Survival was collective. None of this was about comfort. It was about making it through the night alive. Every decision, from how houses were built to how food was eaten and where bodies were placed, came from generations of experience battling cold that could kill without mercy. And yet, when winter ended, the Vikings didn't retreat. They sailed across open oceans, without maps, without compasses, and somehow they reached lands no one else even knew existed. And that story is even more unbelievable than how they slept through the cold.